as promised, I'm going to go through a little bit about the Japanese principle of Ikigai. And something I'd read in this book, Ikigai. I will put all the details down under the video quite some time ago, but I think it really came to sort of more practical application during the lockdown. So it's been a year now. We're nearing March 2021. And in England, we started our lockdown at the end of March 2020, and then went in and out of it. But more or less the whole year we've been in some form of restriction, certainly in Manchester. So when the lockdown started, I think like a lot of people, not everybody, of course, it came as a bit, first of all, as a shock, like everybody else, because it's something that no one was used to. But for a lot of people and a lot of moms, I would say, or at least parents who are caring for children and, doing the daily grind of rush hour, rushing to school, picking up, going in and out. I mean, as homeschoolers, we're constantly in and out, and active, etc., plus the rest in the house. For a lot of moms I spoke to, it came as some sort of relief, not relief as in at last this is happening, but some sort of welcome break. And the interesting bit about it is that it wasn't a break we had chosen; it's a break that was imposed. So it was a bit frustrating, but at the same time, we were forced to stop. And it's interesting because the parallel would be like when you're forced to stop to do something because you're ill or because you're injured or because there's like, an incident, something that happens that force you to basically stop your daily activities for some reason, one reason or another. And for me, for instance, it would be an injury or an illness that would stop me from going out and doing my usual things. So when it started, I was like, the interesting thing, which I told at the time, which I nearly forgot about, is that not long before that, probably, I don't know, over the winter at some point, so 2019, early 2020, I was keeping on thinking guilty feelings of thoughts of, I would love it, I think, if I was forced to stop. And I really could not, I remember very consciously thinking this, if only I did not have, for a little while, I would not have to go out of the house, drive my children to their lesson. And it's not, I mean, really, I can't complain. Homeschooling life, especially with teenagers now, they have their tutors, they have their, they manage their studies more or less, and they can cook if I'm tired, they do things themselves, or vice versa. It's a different flow now than when they were little. So, but it was a kind of, I felt like my life around me still had some sort of frantic element to it that I could not myself deliberately stop because I had obligations. And then going out to training several times a night, several nights a week and weekends. I love it. But it's a kind of constant physical movement. And whenever I wanted to stop and have a rest, whenever I felt guilty, I should be tidying up, I should be folding the clothes, I should be putting, even if I make the children help me, and I'll probably do a video soon about me time, and also getting the children to help, like properly help. But I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So there was this sort of frantic sort of activity around me all the time and in me. So when lockdown arrived, I was like, after a couple of weeks, I think I realized, oh wow, that is really strange. Subhanallah. It's like, so it's this is what I hoped. This is what I asked for. Obviously, I didn't know it would stop me from and our family to go and visit my relatives in France, my parents, and to be able to even take some good proper vitamin D in a sunny, warm country to prepare us for the winter here. But still, yeah, there was an element of me who was like, yes, I am being forced now to stop, and I would never have stopped. And also the other element that helped, and for a lot of people it helped, was that we were all in it together. It was not just me stopping and everybody else continuing and maybe having the fun, like, which is really frustrating when you're ill or having an injury. You see everybody just continuing and having fun, and you're like, fun or whatever, doing what they're supposed to do, and you're forced to not do it. So I suffer from FOMO, the fear of missing out. Because social people, very sociable people, we are like this. We're extroverts. We suffer from FOMO. But yeah, so I remember telling that my friends, it's like, this is really uncanny, this is weird. It's like, I asked for it. I have to be careful what I pray for, because this happened. Anyway, so now thinking about, when I was thinking about doing these videos a bit more, I thought about the kind of things I'd like to share with you all, and Ikigai was definitely at the top of my list. So Ikigai is basically this Japanese concept, which can be translated as, that's from the book Ikigai, as the happiness of always being busy. So it's not necessarily having just a passion and it's in your head and you think about it or whatever. It's just this sort of being busy. But when you see the way it's developed, it's not like rushing out and doing lots of things. It's just having something that you're so passionate about you don't realize you're doing it. You do it with others often, and it's just something that is in the flow, is in your. It puts you into kind of a zone, and makes you want to get up in the morning. So, what they propose in this book, from their research, is that it basically helps with the longevity of the Japanese. And especially on the island of Okinawa, there are other places that are they called blue zones? Am I not getting this wrong? I hope. We're basically in other places in the world. Interestingly, a particular place in California, another place in Puerto Rico, somewhere in Central Europe, Poland possibly, Sicily. Sardinia. In the island off the west coast of Italy, near Rome, I think. So Naples, and it's you can see I'm just not brushed up on my geography, but these are places, a few places where people tend to live a lot longer than the rest of the world population on average, or Western population on average. So some of the things that they found, the authors have found, was basically when you go to Okinawa, although Okinawa is associated with the nuclear bomb in 1945-46, they noticed that talking to the elderly residents of the town, that something far more powerful than just natural resources and things around them, I guess, helped, was an uncommon joy flows from its inhabitants and guides them through the long and pleasurable journey of their lives. Is that beautiful? So basically, they also apply the principle of Ichariba Chode. Sorry, this is Japanese, so I'm not an expert, but a local expression that means treat everyone like a brother, even if you've never met them before. That sounds very similar to the Christian and the Islamic principles. So basically, they feel always part of a community. They never feel alone, even if they individually live alone. They are part of a bigger structure. They're also very, very strong on teamwork. They always help each other. Another thing as well. So more theoretically, they said that according to the Japanese, everyone has an Ikigai, and they associate that to the French philosophy of raison d'être, reason of being, and it's hidden deep inside us, and we need to find it. We need to basically go on a search and find it. So I guess I found mine, it's taekwondo, health, sort of that sort of things, helping others. But Islam is also my Ikigai in a way, an Islamic community. So one of the headlines, the titles of the section is "Whatever you do, don't retire." And there's a fact that people who continue to have an activity beyond their retirement age are a lot happier. So for instance, I'm always amazed as academic, for instance, we always say, don't we, or actors, those who have the chance of continuing when they're really old and still being hired, but they die on stage, don't they? They continue their academic work until they're no longer able to, mentally or possibly physically, or sometimes just because they've just died there and then. And this is the case, for instance, of my stepfather-in-law, who is professor of Islamic studies and translator of the Quran, and he was always writing books, and he's always thinking about conferences and talks and lectures, and he's 86. So it's just, his mind is so sharp, and he's just there. He's constantly in his zone, constantly in his flow. So that definitely helps. And that's what I want to do. Inshallah, I feel that gives me a long life. This is what I want to continue to do throughout my life. So basically, having a clearly defined Ikigai brings satisfaction, happiness, and meaning to our lives. And you'd basically just have to go and search for it. So they say, for instance, Jean-Paul Sartre, who's, for those who know, a French philosopher who wrote a lot about existence versus nurture versus nature, etc. And he says, well, it's just something you create. But what these authors say, and from their research, is that it's not necessarily something you just kind of, I'm going to do this and that's going to be my passion. It's something that there's a connection and you just recognize it. A bit like when you recognize a friend, someone who, like, your soul, as if you'd met them before. It's the same thing. It's like it just matches you. It just fits you so perfectly. And you're like, wow, that's just amazing. That's just made for me. Because you don't have to think about it. Yeah, it can be stressful, it can be tiring, it can be frustrating sometimes. Nothing is easy, even if you do gardening, especially if it's me doing gardening. But whatever it is, you just find that you just have always that energy for it, that enthusiasm for it, that desire for it, and your mind sticking in the background constantly about it. And this is what, for me, Taekwondo is. I'm constantly thinking about it. And to a certain extent, Pilates and teaching and helping people to get healthier. That really, I do not stop. And even more so now that I've started doing these videos, because I just think about new things. I could tell them about this. So this is what you have to find. Now, if you're happy the way you are and you don't need it, you might be that it's just your family life. That's your purpose. You're satisfied with that. But you need to be sure that there's not something else kind of telling you in the background, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that, if you say I wish, I mean, just, you're not completely in the zone, you're not completely in tune with what you're doing. So that's kind of just the basic ideas I wanted to bring, because I don't want it to be too long. It's already nearly 15 minutes, this video. But it really, just want to instill a little bit of a desire to research this thing. So just very, very briefly, the people who have Ikigai in those places, they live longer than the rest of the population. They suffer from fewer chronic illnesses. Many of these centenarians enjoy enviable levels of vitality and health that would be unthinkable for people of advanced age elsewhere. So that's really interesting. The blood tests reveal fewer free radicals, as a result of drinking tea and eating until their stomach are only 80% full. They're also healthier. Women experience more moderate symptoms during menopause. That I'm really interested in that. And both men and women maintain higher level of sexual hormones until much later in life. The rate of dementia is well below the global average. I mean, you know, you can't go wrong if you do that. You've got to look at it. And there's lots of details on what sort of food they eat, how they lead their lives, and the kind of thing. It just inspires you to maybe add a few things that will make your life a little bit, you know, lighter, happier, more enjoyable. And ultimately, God has given us this trust, this body, this mind, this world, children, family, everybody around us. These are all trust, amanat, that we have to take care of. And so go for it. Enjoy.